Now let's begin. Gregory Logan wiped the grease from his hands with the red shop rag hanging from his belt, surveying the six-bay automotive shop he'd built from nothing over the past 15 years. The October sun filtered through the high windows, casting long shadows across the polished concrete floor. He'd started with a single bay and a dream, working 18-hour days while Christy waited tables at the Cedar Ridge Diner, both of them scraping together every dollar to give their daughter Melissa something better. The Sunday family dinner at his sister Janie's house was supposed to be a celebration. Melissa had just turned 15, and she'd brought home a report card that made Gregory's chest swell with pride. Straight A's, advanced placement courses, the works. He'd framed it and hung it in his office at the shop, right next to the photo of Christy from their wedding day, her smile bright despite the borrowed dress and courthouse ceremony. Carlton Holt, Janie's husband, had married into the Logan family 5 years ago, bringing with him a trust fund, 3 luxury cars, and an attitude that made Gregory's jaw clench every time they were in the same room. Carlton worked in investment management, which as far as Gregory could tell meant moving his family's money around and looking down on people who actually worked for a living. Their son Brad was 17, a junior at the private academy across town, and already carrying his father's superiority complex like a designer jacket. The dining room was warm, filled with the scent of Janie's pot roast and the sound of forced pleasantries. Gregory sat at the far end of the table, watching Melissa help her mother set out dishes. His daughter had Christy's dark eyes and his own stubborn chin, a combination that had gotten her through more than a few tough situations at the public high school, where she insisted on staying despite Carlton's pointed comments about better opportunities. "So Melissa," Carlton said, swirling his wine glass with practiced ease, "have you given any thought to your future? College applications are just around the corner for someone your age." Gregory saw Melissa's shoulders tighten slightly, but her voice remained steady. "I'm planning to apply to several schools, Uncle Carlton. I'm particularly interested in their pre-law programs." Carlton laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Pre-law? Ambitious. Of course, those programs are quite competitive. And expensive. I assume you've discussed financial realities with your parents?" "Carlton," Janie warned quietly, but her husband continued as if she hadn't spoken. "I'm just being practical, sweetheart. The legal field is very elite, very competitive. You need the right connections, the right background. Not everyone is cut out for that kind of pressure." He glanced meaningfully at Gregory, then at Christy. "Sometimes it's better to have realistic expectations. There's no shame in a good trade school or community college." Gregory felt Christy's hand find his under the table, squeezing gently. He knew what she was asking without words. "Let it go. Don't make a scene. It's not worth it." He squeezed back, a promise to keep his temper in check. Brad spoke up from across the table, his voice carrying his father's condescension despite his youth. "Dad's right. I mean, no offense, Melissa, but you go to Riverside High, the public school. When I apply to Yale next year, I'll have recommendations from Senator Morrison and Dean Blackwell. That's the kind of edge you need." Brad's already been offered an internship at Holt Financial for next summer, Carlton added with poorly concealed pride. "Nothing like getting your foot in the door early." The dinner continued in strained politeness, the conversation carefully steered towards safer topics. Gregory helped clear the dishes, finding solace in the familiar rhythm of stacking plates and carrying them to the kitchen. He was loading the dishwasher when he heard footsteps behind him. Melissa stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, trying to look unbothered but not quite succeeding. "Can we go soon, Dad? I have homework." "Sure, honey. Let me just finish. You'll end up a waitress like your mom was." The voice came from the hallway, Carlton's words floating through the half-open door to the dining room where he was speaking to Brad. Gregory froze, his hand tightening around the plate he was holding. "I'm serious, son," Carlton continued, oblivious to the damage his words were causing. "That's what happens when you don't have proper guidance, proper resources. Gregory's a decent enough mechanic, I suppose, but he can't give that girl what she needs to succeed. She'll work hard, sure, probably get into some state school if she's lucky, but mark my words, she'll end up serving coffee somewhere, just like her mother. It's the cycle of mediocrity." Gregory looked at his daughter. Her face had gone pale, but her eyes were dry, her jaw set in that stubborn line he knew so well. When she met his gaze, he saw something there that made his heart ache, determination mixed with hurt. the resolve of someone who'd just been handed a challenge they intended to meet. He smiled. Not the angry, bitter smile he wanted to give Carlton, but something gentler, meant only for Melissa. He set down the plate carefully and walked over to her, placing both hands on her shoulders. "You know what your mom and I see when we look at you?" he asked quietly. "We see someone brilliant, someone kind, someone who's going to do extraordinary things, not because of money or connections, but because of who you are inside. And you know what else?" Melissa's eyes were shining now, but still no tears fell. "What? Your mom being a waitress? That's nothing to be ashamed of. She worked 12-hour shifts to help me build the shop. She smiled through sore feet and rude customers because she believed in our family. That's not mediocrity, honey. That's heroism. And you carry that same strength in you." A single tear escaped then, tracking down her cheek. "I'm going to make you both proud. You already do. Every single day." They left shortly after, the drive home quiet but not uncomfortable. Christy sat in the passenger seat, her hand resting on Gregory's thigh, while Melissa was in the back, earbuds in, already lost in her own thoughts. That night, after Melissa had gone to bed, Gregory sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at nothing in particular. Christy joined him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders from behind. "You heard him too," he said. "It wasn't a question." "I did. I wanted to. I know." She kissed the top of his head. "But we don't fight Carlton's way. We fight our way." Gregory turned to look at her, this woman who'd served scrambled eggs and coffee for years to help him chase his dreams, who'd never once complained about the uncertainty or the struggle. "She's going to prove him wrong." "She is," Christy agreed. "And we're going to help her do it." Over the next 3 years, the Logan household operated like a well-oiled machine with a singular purpose. Gregory restructured his work schedule, opening the shop an hour earlier and closing an hour later to maximize income, while ensuring he was home for dinner every night. Christy took a management position at an upscale restaurant downtown, the tips from their wealthy clientele going straight into Melissa's college fund. Melissa transformed the small desk in her bedroom into command central. Color-coded schedules covered the wall above it: study sessions, volunteer work, debate team practices, college prep courses. Gregory would often find her there at 11 at night, bent over textbooks, highlighter in hand, determination etched into every line of her face. "Sweetheart, it's late," he'd say from the doorway. "Just one more chapter, Dad." It was always just one more chapter, one more practice test, one more essay to perfect. Gregory watched his daughter push herself harder than he'd ever pushed his employees, and while part of him worried about the pressure, another part recognized the fire burning in her. This wasn't just about college anymore. This was about proving something, to herself, to Carlton, to everyone who'd ever looked at their modest house and working-class background and made assumptions. He started doing his part too, quietly, in ways that Carlton would never understand. Every car that came into Logan Automotive got Gregory's personal attention. He built relationships with his customers, people from all walks of life. When Mrs. Patricia Devine brought her Mercedes in for service, Gregory didn't just fix her transmission. He listened to her talk about her work as a college admissions counselor. When Officer Alan McGrath needed his patrol car serviced, Gregory made sure it was perfect, building the kind of trust that turned into genuine friendship. 6 months after that dinner at Janie's house, Gregory called in his first favor. Mrs. Devine's daughter needed help with her college essays, and Gregory knew just the bright young woman who could tutor her. Melissa spent Saturday afternoons helping Tricia Devine navigate the application process, and in return, Patricia spent those same Saturdays answering Melissa's questions about what admissions committees really looked for. "It's not just grades," Patricia explained one afternoon while Gregory worked on her car in the bay below. "It's the story you tell. Who are you? What drives you? What will you contribute to the campus community?" Melissa soaked it all up like a sponge, taking notes, asking follow-up questions. Gregory listened from the garage floor, pride swelling in his chest. The second year brought more challenges. Melissa took on a part-time job at the public library, shelving books and helping with the children's reading program. The money went into her college fund, but the experience gave her something more valuable: a connection to Oliver Stone, the library director, who happened to be an alumnus of Harvard Law School. "Your daughter's exceptional," Oliver told Gregory one evening when he stopped by to pick Melissa up. "The way she engages with the kids, The initiative she shows with programming ideas. She reminds me of the students I mentor at my alma mater. Harvard? Gregory asked, keeping his voice casual despite the sudden acceleration of his heartbeat. Class of '98. Still serve on the alumni interview committee. Oliver smiled knowingly. When she's ready to apply, have her reach out to me. Can't guarantee anything, of course, but I'd be happy to discuss the process with her. Gregory thanked him, and later that night, sitting at the kitchen table with Christy and Melissa, they allowed themselves to dream a little bigger. Meanwhile, Carlton's world was beginning to show cracks, though he seemed oblivious to them. Brad had been expelled from the prestigious academy, something about a cheating scandal that Carlton managed to hush up with a generous donation, and was now attending Riverside High, the same public school he'd once mocked. The irony wasn't lost on Gregory when he saw Brad in the hallways during a parent-teacher conference. Mr. Logan, one of Melissa's teachers, Faith Nolan, pulled him aside. I wanted to tell you that your daughter is being considered for the National Merit Scholarship Program. Her SAT scores were extraordinary. That's wonderful news. It is. And I have to say, the contrast between her and her cousin is remarkable. Brad Holt is in my third period English class. He turned in an essay last week that was clearly plagiarized from an online source. Faith's expression was carefully neutral, but her meaning was clear. Melissa, on the other hand, crafts original arguments with sophistication beyond her years. The parent-teacher conferences became a study in contrasts. Gregory sat through glowing reports about Melissa's academic achievements, her leadership in the debate team, her volunteer work. Down the hall, he could hear Carlton's raised voice arguing with Brad's calculus teacher about a failing grade. This is unacceptable, Carlton's voice carried. Brad's future is at stake here. Then perhaps Brad should attend class more regularly and complete his assignments. The teacher responded coolly. Gregory kept his expression neutral as he passed Carlton in the hallway, offering a polite nod. Carlton's face was red, his expensive suit somehow looking rumpled despite its tailored fit. Brad slouched behind him, earbuds in, completely disengaged. Gregory, Carlton stopped him, forcing civility. How are things? Good. Busy. The shop's expanding. Just leased the building next door. Well, that's good. Carlton's smile didn't reach his eyes. And Melissa? Still planning for community college. Gregory smiled, the same calm smile he'd given his daughter 3 years ago. She's got her sights set on something a bit more ambitious. We'll see how it goes. The expansion of Logan Automotive was strategic. Gregory had saved for years, and the timing was perfect. The building next door had been a failed retail space, and Gregory transformed it into a premium detailing center and vintage car restoration shop. He hired Robbie O'Connor, a master craftsman who'd worked at high-end shops in California, and together they built a reputation that attracted clients from 3 counties over. The vintage Mercedes that Senator Perry Rodriguez brought in for restoration became a 6-month project that Gregory handled personally. Every conversation with the senator was professional, focused on the car, but Gregory had a gift for making people feel heard. He listened to Rodriguez talk about his daughter's struggles at Yale, about the pressure of living up to expectations, about the importance of hard work and character. You've got a daughter, don't you? Rodriguez asked one afternoon, running his hand over the newly restored leather seats of his 1967 280 SL. Melissa, she's a junior now. Straight A student, works at the library, volunteers with the literacy program. Smart kid. Brilliant. And determined. She's applying to Harvard next fall. Rodriguez looked up from the car, genuine interest in his eyes. Harvard? That's ambitious. Good for her. The interview process is rigorous. She's up for the challenge. I'm sure she is. You know, I sit on the board of the Rodriguez Foundation. We offer scholarships to exceptional students from working families. Have her look into it when application season comes around. Gregory thanked him, maintaining his composure until Rodriguez left, then allowed himself a moment of quiet celebration. Piece by piece, connection by connection, he was building a network of support for his daughter that had nothing to do with money or family name, and everything to do with genuine relationships and mutual respect. The third year arrived with a sense of momentum. Melissa was now a senior, her college applications consuming every spare moment. The house was littered with essay drafts, recommendation letter envelopes, and scholarship applications. Gregory had installed a second desk in Melissa's room, and most nights he and Christy would sit with her, proofreading essays, researching programs, helping her craft the story of who she was and who she wanted to become. "Why Harvard?" Christy asked one night, reading over Melissa's personal statement. Melissa looked up from her laptop, considering the question seriously. "Because it's the best. Because people like Uncle Carlton think someone like me can't make it there. Because I want to prove that hard work and determination matter more than a trust fund." She paused. "And because I genuinely love learning. The professors there, the resources, the other students. I want to be challenged. I want to be somewhere that pushes me to be better." Gregory met Christy's eyes across their daughter's desk. They'd raised a fighter, someone who understood that the best revenge wasn't anger or bitterness, but success. The Harvard application went out in early November. So did applications to Yale, Stanford, Georgetown, and a dozen other schools. Melissa had crafted each application with meticulous care, tailoring her essays to highlight different aspects of her experience. The letters of recommendation came from Mrs. Devine, Oliver Stone, Senator Rodriguez, and her debate coach Nathaniel Fuentes, each one speaking to a different facet of Melissa's character and capabilities. Then came the waiting. December, January, February passed in a blur of normal life overlaid with anticipation. Melissa maintained her grades, competed in the state debate finals, and continued her volunteer work. Gregory threw himself into the shop, working on an increasingly prestigious roster of vehicles. Christy was promoted to restaurant manager, her salary jumping significantly. And Carlton? Carlton's world was quietly unraveling in ways he seemed determined to ignore. Brad had been arrested for vandalism, spray painting the rival school's football field, and while Carlton's lawyer got the charges reduced, the incident made the local news. Holt Financial was facing an audit, something about discrepancies in client accounts that Carlton dismissed as routine compliance checks. His marriage to Janie was strained, the tension visible at the few family gatherings they still attended. March arrived with the kind of crisp spring morning that made everything feel possible. Gregory was in the middle of rebuilding an engine when his phone rang. Christy's name flashed on the screen. "The envelope came," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "From Harvard." "Yes. It's thick." Gregory's hands were shaking as he stripped off his gloves. "Don't open it without me. I'm coming home." He made the 15-minute drive in 10, pulling into their driveway to find Christy and Melissa sitting on the front porch steps, a large envelope between them. Melissa's face was pale, her hands clasped tightly together. Gregory sat down on the other side of his daughter, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Whatever it says, we're proud of you. You know that, right?" Melissa nodded, not trusting her voice. "Open it, honey," Christy encouraged gently. The envelope tore with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet street. Melissa pulled out the letter, her eyes scanning the first line once, twice, 3 times before she spoke. "Dear Melissa," she read aloud, her voice shaking. "It is with great pleasure that the admissions committee of Harvard University offers you admission to the class of—" She didn't finish the sentence. Christy grabbed her, pulling her into a fierce hug, both of them crying now. Gregory wrapped his arms around both his girls, his own eyes wet, his heart so full he thought it might burst. "You did it," he whispered. "You actually did it." "We did it," Melissa corrected, pulling back to look at both her parents. "All of us together." Inside the envelope was more than just an acceptance letter. There was a financial aid package that covered full tuition, a notification that she'd been awarded the Rodriguez Foundation scholarship, and a personal note from Oliver Stone congratulating her on her acceptance and her interview performance. "Full scholarship," Christy breathed, reading through the papers. "Gregory, it's a full ride. Everything covered." Gregory looked at his daughter, this brilliant, determined young woman who'd taken an insult and transformed it into fuel for her dreams. "How do you want to celebrate?" Melissa's smile was slow and deliberate, carrying an edge that reminded Gregory exactly whose daughter she was. "I think Uncle Carlton should know, don't you?" The photograph was Christy's idea. They posed on the front porch, Gregory and Christy flanking Melissa, who held her acceptance letter prominently displayed. Gregory wore his Logan Automotive shirt, the one with the logo he'd designed himself. Christy wore her restaurant manager badge. There was no pretense, no attempt to be anything other than exactly who they were, a working-class family who'd achieved something extraordinary. The caption was simple: her mom was a waitress. Her dad is her biggest fan. Where's your son again? Gregory had Carlton's number, but had never used it for anything other than essential family communication. He attached the photo and sent it without hesitation, then set his phone aside and focused on his daughter, who was already pulling out her laptop to research Harvard's pre-law program. The response came 3 hours later. It was a single line. Congratulations to Melissa. No acknowledgement of his own words from 3 years ago. No apology. No recognition of how wrong he'd been. Just a terse, obligatory congratulation that probably took him 3 tries to force himself to type. But Gregory knew Carlton had seen the message. He knew Carlton understood exactly what it meant. And that was enough. For now, the weeks following the acceptance were a whirlwind. Melissa received 7 more acceptances from top-tier schools, but Harvard had always been the dream. They attended the admitted students' weekend, Gregory and Christy taking time off work to drive to Cambridge and walk the historic campus with their daughter. It's really happening, Melissa whispered as they stood in Harvard Yard, centuries-old buildings surrounding them, the weight of history and achievement hanging in the air. It really is, Gregory agreed. Back home, life continued with a new sense of purpose. Melissa finished her senior year at the top of her class, gave a moving valedictorian speech that brought most of the audience to tears, and prepared for the next chapter of her life. Gregory and Christy began the process of becoming empty nesters, a prospect both exciting and terrifying. But something else was happening too, something Gregory noticed in the margins of their family interactions. Brad Holt had graduated from Riverside High by the skin of his teeth, his GPA barely qualifying him for admission to the local community college. Carlton had stopped talking about Yale, stopped bragging about Brad's future. The family Christmas card that year featured only Carlton and Janie, Brad's absence notable and unexplained. Janie called Gregory one evening in July, her voice tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. "I need to ask you a favor," she said. "Of course. What do you need?" A long pause. "It's Brad. He needs a job. Things have been difficult financially. The business had some setbacks. Brad applied to 15 places and hasn't gotten a single call back." Gregory felt the irony of the situation settle over him like a familiar coat. What kind of work is he looking for? Anything, honestly. He's not picky anymore. The admission seemed to cost her something. "I know things between you and Carlton have been strained. But Brad's my nephew too, and he needs help. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate." "Send him by the shop tomorrow," Gregory said. "We're always hiring." The gratitude in Janie's voice was palpable. "Thank you, Gregory. Truly." He hung up and sat in silence for a long moment. Christy appeared in the doorway, reading his expression with the ease of 20 years of marriage. "That was Janie? Brad needs a job." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "And you're going to hire him?" "I am. Because you're a good man," she said, crossing the room to kiss his forehead. "Better than Carlton deserves." Maybe. Or maybe because the best way to show someone the value of hard work is to make them actually do it. Brad Holt showed up at Logan Automotive the next morning at 9 o'clock sharp, wearing designer jeans and a polo shirt that probably cost more than Gregory paid his tire techs for a week's work. He was 19 now, taller than Gregory remembered, but carrying himself with the same entitled slouch. "Uncle Greg," he said, extending a hand. "Thanks for seeing me." "It's Mr. Logan here," Gregory corrected gently but firmly. "Everyone calls me that at the shop. Keeps things professional." Brad's hand dropped, confusion flickering across his face. "Oh, sure, Mr. Logan." Gregory led him through the shop, pointing out the different bays, introducing him to the team. Robbie O'Connor was working on a 1969 Corvette restoration, his hands moving with practiced precision. Zach Branch was in Bay 3, a recent hire who'd started as a tire tech and was now training as a full mechanic. Every person Gregory introduced was someone who'd worked their way up, learned their trade through dedication and effort. "We've got an opening in the detail center," Gregory explained. "It's entry-level work. You'll be washing cars, vacuuming interiors, cleaning wheels and tires. Pay is $12 an hour to start. If you prove yourself, there's room to move up." $12. Brad's voice cracked slightly. "An hour? That's above minimum wage, and you'll get regular raises based on performance. Plus benefits after 90 days. Brad looked around the shop, at the guys in their coveralls, at the cars in various states of repair, at the time clock on the wall where everyone punched in. This was clearly not the kind of job he'd envisioned for himself. When would I start? Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. We open at 7, and the detail team comes in early to prep the cars for pickup. 6 in the morning? Brad's expression suggested Gregory had just asked him to report to Mars. That's right. Robbie here will train you. Gregory gestured to his master craftsman, who looked up from the Corvette with an expression that said he'd trained plenty of entitled rich kids and knew exactly how this would go. Brad started the next day, 40 minutes late, with a Starbucks coffee in hand. Robbie sent him home to change out of his designer sneakers and come back in work boots. He showed up 2 hours later, sullen and resentful, and spent the rest of the day learning just how hard it was to properly detail a luxury vehicle. The first week was brutal. Brad complained constantly about the early hours, the physical labor, the fact that he had to wear a uniform with Logan Automotive embroidered on the chest. He called in sick twice, showed up late 4 times, and generally made it clear he considered himself above this kind of work. Gregory watched it all with patience born of experience. He'd seen guys like Brad before, young men who thought the world owed them something simply for existing. Most of them didn't last. But Gregory had a feeling Brad wouldn't quit, not with his father's financial problems and the complete absence of other opportunities. He's terrible, Robbie told Gregory at the end of Brad's second week. Lazy, entitled, does half the job and calls it done. Yesterday he left swirl marks on a client's brand new Porsche. I had to redo the whole thing. Keep him, Gregory said, but don't cut him any slack. He does it right, or he does it again. You got a reason for keeping him around? Because I can think of 5 guys who do better work for less headache. Gregory smiled. Let's call it a long-term investment. Summer stretched into fall. Melissa left for Harvard in late August, and Gregory and Christy drove her to Cambridge, helping her move into her dorm room, meeting her roommate, walking the campus one more time. When they said goodbye, Gregory hugged his daughter tight, whispered how proud he was, how much he believed in her. I'll make you proud, Melissa promised. You already have, he reminded her. Everything else is just bonus. Back home, the shop felt different without the prospect of Melissa coming by after school, without her presence in the house. But Gregory threw himself into work with renewed energy. Logan Automotive had become one of the premier shops in the region, with a client list that included judges, business owners, doctors, and politicians. The reputation Gregory had built on quality work and honest service was paying dividends. Brad was still there, still showing up, mostly on time now, still doing mediocre work that Robbie had to constantly correct. But Gregory noticed small changes. The complaints were less frequent. The designer clothes had been replaced by practical workwear. Brad's hands, once smooth and uncalloused, were developing the rough spots that came from actual labor. Gregory didn't go easy on him. When Brad did substandard work, Gregory made him redo it. When Brad showed up late, Gregory docked his pay. When Brad tried to cut corners, Gregory called him on it publicly, in front of the whole shop. There were no special favors for being Carlton Holt's son. Why are you so hard on me? Brad finally asked one day in November, 6 months into his employment. I know you're my uncle. I know you're doing Aunt Janie a favor by hiring me, but you treat me like everyone else. Gregory looked up from the engine he was working on. That's exactly right. I am treating you like everyone else. Because that's what you are here, an employee, not my nephew. You want respect? Earn it. You want to move up? Prove you deserve it. You think you're entitled to special treatment because of who your father is. Brad's jaw clenched. My father says. Your father told my daughter she'd end up a waitress like her mother, Gregory interrupted, his voice level but carrying steel underneath. Your father assumed that hard work and determination couldn't overcome a lack of money or connections. Your father was wrong. And if you follow his example, you'll end up exactly where you are now, cleaning tires in someone else's garage. The words landed like physical blows. Brad's face went pale, then red, emotions warring across his features. For a moment, Gregory thought he might quit, might storm out in a rage of wounded pride. Instead, Brad asked quietly, what do I need to do? Show up on time. Do the work right the first time. Listen to Robbie. Learn. Stop acting like this job is beneath you and start treating it like an opportunity to become better. Something shifted in Brad that day. The change wasn't dramatic or immediate, but it was real. He started arriving 15 minutes early instead of 15 minutes late. His detail work improved, the complaints from Robbie becoming less frequent. He asked questions, watched the mechanics work, showed genuine interest in learning more than just how to clean a car. Gregory watched the transformation with careful attention. He wasn't interested in humiliating Brad or breaking his spirit, but he was determined to teach him something Carlton never had: that respect is earned, that work has dignity regardless of the collar color, that character matters more than bank accounts. December brought an early snow and a call from Melissa that made Gregory's heart sing. She'd aced her first semester exams, joined the mock trial team, and landed an internship with a civil rights organization for the following summer. Her voice on the phone was bright with excitement and purpose. "How's it going there?" she asked. "How's the shop?" "Busy. We just landed a contract to maintain the county fleet vehicles. And your cousin Brad is working here now." A pause. "Brad, working at the shop. Started in July. He's in the detail center, learning what honest work looks like." Melissa laughed, and Gregory could hear the satisfaction in it. "Dad, you're terrible. I'm practical, and maybe a little petty, but mostly practical. Does Uncle Carlton know?" "Oh, he knows. He dropped by last month to pick Brad up when his car broke down. Saw his son wearing our company uniform, detailing a Mercedes. You should have seen his face. That encounter had been sweeter than Gregory had imagined." Carlton had pulled up in his Lexus, one of 3 luxury cars he'd sold in the past year, though he still clung to this one, and walked into the detail center like a man headed for his own execution. Brad had been in the middle of vacuuming out a Lincoln Navigator, his uniform dirty from a day's work, sweat on his forehead despite the December cold. He looked up when his father entered, something like shame crossing his face. "Dad, what are you? Your mother sent me. Your car's in the shop again." Carlton's voice was tight, controlled, refusing to acknowledge the situation's full irony. Gregory had been in his office but came out when he saw Carlton, professional courtesy demanding he greet all visitors. "Carlton, good to see you." "Gregory." Carlton's eyes flicked around the detail center, taking in the other workers, the luxury vehicles being serviced, the obvious success of the operation. "I'm just here to pick up Brad." "Of course. Brad, you're good to head out. Make sure you clock out first." Brad had scurried to the time clock, punched out, and practically ran to his father's car. Gregory had watched them drive away, noting the rigid set of Carlton's shoulders, the way he didn't look at his son during the entire exchange. The family Christmas gathering that year was tense. Janie hosted again, but the atmosphere was nothing like the comfortable celebration from years past. Carlton barely spoke, nursing a drink in the corner while Janie tried desperately to keep conversation flowing. Brad seemed caught between worlds, no longer the entitled teenager he'd been, but not yet comfortable with who he was becoming. Melissa came home for winter break looking polished and confident in a way that had nothing to do with clothing or appearance and everything to do with self-assurance. She wore a Harvard Law sweatshirt and jeans, carried herself with quiet authority, and commanded the room without saying a word. When Carlton finally acknowledged her, his words were measured. "Congratulations on your acceptance, Melissa. Harvard is quite an achievement." "Thank you, Uncle Carlton." Her smile was gracious, but held something else underneath, a kind of knowing that made Carlton shift uncomfortably. Later, Gregory found her in the kitchen helping Christy with dessert. "You handled that well. I don't need to prove anything to him anymore," Melissa said simply. "The acceptance letter did that. Everything else is just me living my life." "That's very mature of you. You taught me that. Remember what you said the night he called Mom a waitress? You said the best response isn't anger, it's success." "You were right." Gregory pulled her into a hug, his brilliant, compassionate daughter who understood that victory didn't require cruelty, just achievement. January arrived with new beginnings. Melissa returned to Harvard for her second semester. Brad was promoted to junior detailer with a $2 raise, the first real recognition he'd earned through merit rather than family connection. The shop expanded again, adding 2 more bays and hiring 3 new mechanics. And Carlton's world continued its slow collapse. Holt Financial closed its doors in February after the audit revealed significant fraud, not by Carlton himself, but by his partner, Frederick Ruiz, who'd been embezzling for years. Carlton lost most of his clients, his reputation, and a significant portion of his remaining assets in the legal fallout. The trust fund that had sustained him for decades was tied up in lawsuits. Gregory learned about it through Janie, who called one evening in tears. I don't know what we're going to do. Carlton's business is gone. We might have to sell the house. Everything's falling apart. I'm sorry, Janie. That's rough. Brad's job at your shop, it's not just extra money anymore. It's helping us keep the lights on. Her voice broke. I never thought we'd be in this position. Carlton was so sure we'd always be secure. Money comes and goes, Gregory said gently. What matters is how you handle it. Brad's doing better at the shop, you know. Really applying himself. There's a good kid under all that entitlement. He just needed a chance to prove it. Thank you for giving him that chance. I know it couldn't have been easy after what Carlton said about Melissa. Gregory thought about that dinner 3 years ago, about the hurt in his daughter's eyes, about the determination that followed. Actually, it's been easier than you might think. Watching Brad grow up, learn what hard work means, it's been satisfying in ways I didn't expect. Spring semester brought more changes. Brad asked Gregory if he could train as a mechanic instead of staying in detail. I want to learn the trade properly. I'm tired of just cleaning cars. I want to actually fix them. Gregory studied him carefully, looking for signs of the entitled teenager who'd shown up 10 months ago. He saw calloused hands, humility in the eyes, genuine interest in the question. It's a 4-year apprenticeship. Long hours, technical school classes at night. Starting pay is less than you're making now because you'll be learning more than producing. It's hard work. I know, but I want to do it. I want to actually be good at something. Talk to Robbie. If he agrees to train you, we'll make it happen. Robbie agreed, though he made it clear his standards would be high. I don't care whose nephew you are. You work hard, you learn, you earn your spot. Otherwise, you're gone. Brad nodded, accepting the terms without argument. And to Gregory's genuine surprise, he lived up to them. He enrolled in technical school, started attending classes twice a week after full work days. His hands, already roughened from detail work, developed new calluses from wielding tools. He made mistakes, plenty of them, but he learned from each one, took Robbie's corrections seriously, asked questions. By the time Melissa came home for summer break, Brad had been promoted to apprentice mechanic level 1. His pay had actually decreased slightly, but his pride in the position was evident. When Melissa visited the shop to see her dad, Brad was under a Honda Civic, replacing brake pads with Robbie supervising. That's really him? Melissa asked, watching Brad work with an intensity she'd never seen in him before. That's really him, Gregory confirmed. Turns out when you take away the trust fund and the sense of entitlement, there's actually a decent person in there. Who knew? Melissa's tone was wry, but Gregory could hear genuine surprise underneath. That summer, while Melissa worked her internship in Boston, Gregory implemented the next phase of his unintentional plan. The county fleet contract had been so successful that the city approached him about opening a second location specifically dedicated to municipal and commercial vehicles. It was a massive opportunity, requiring significant investment and expansion. Gregory could have brought in outside investors, could have kept it simple and safe. Instead, he approached it the way he'd built everything else, through relationships and community. He pitched the expansion to Senator Rodriguez and Mrs. Devine, both of whom had become genuine friends over the years. Rodriguez's foundation provided a small business loan at favorable terms. Mrs. Devine connected him with other entrepreneurs who'd successfully scaled their operations. The second location opened in September, just as Melissa started her sophomore year. Logan Automotive Commercial Services employed 15 people at launch, servicing everything from police cars to delivery vans. Gregory hired Zach Branch to manage the new location, promoting from within as he always had, rewarding loyalty and hard work. And he hired Brad Holt as one of the full-time mechanics at the commercial location. Why? Brad asked when Gregory offered him the position. You're promoting me again, but I've only been an apprentice for 6 months. Other guys have been here longer. Because you've shown up every day for over a year. Because you've stopped making excuses and started making improvements. Because Robbie says you have potential, and I trust his judgment. Gregory paused. And because you're family, and family takes care of each other. Even when things get hard. Brad's eyes glistened slightly. My dad wouldn't have done that. I'm not your dad. I'm your boss. But I'm also your uncle, and I want to see you succeed. This job comes with a raise and full benefits. You'll be working on bigger vehicles, learning different systems. It's a real opportunity. Don't waste it. I won't. I promise. Fall semester brought unexpected news from Cambridge. Melissa had been selected for a study abroad program in constitutional law, spending her spring semester at Oxford University. The opportunity was incredible, fully funded, and would position her perfectly for law school applications in 2 years. "That's my girl," Gregory said when she called with the news, his voice thick with pride. "From Riverside High to Oxford. Not too shabby. I keep thinking about what Uncle Carlton said. About ending up a waitress like Mom. About not having the right connections or background." Melissa's voice was thoughtful, not angry. He was wrong about what matters. But he was right that connections matter, just not the kind he meant. "The connections you helped me build, the relationships based on respect and shared values, those mattered more than any trust fund could have. Your mother and I just opened doors. You're the one who walked through them. We all did it together." That's what he never understood. Success isn't about standing on other people. It's about lifting each other up. Gregory thought about Brad, working late at the commercial location, learning to rebuild transmissions and diagnose electrical systems. He thought about Carlton, whose grand plans had crumbled while his son found purpose in a garage. He thought about the path from that painful dinner to this moment of triumph. The second year of operations at both locations proved the business model's strength. Logan Automotive was now employing 32 people, had contracts with 3 municipalities, and had a waiting list for restoration projects. Gregory's personal reputation had grown beyond the local community. Automotive magazines featured his work, industry conferences invited him to speak, competitors called for advice. And through it all, Carlton Holt's fall continued. He'd taken a job in sales at a friend's insurance company, a significant step down from running his own firm. The house was sold, the family downsizing to a modest apartment in the same complex where Gregory and Christy had lived when they first got married. The luxury cars were gone, replaced by practical sedans. The country club membership was canceled. Janie handled it with more grace than her husband, finding work as an administrative assistant at a doctor's office. She and Christy reconnected, their relationship strengthening now that Carlton's influence had diminished. Sisters again, not separated by class and circumstance. Brad continued to thrive at the commercial location, showing up early, staying late, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. He'd quit complaining about the work, stopped comparing his life to his friends' privileged existences, found satisfaction in fixing things with his own hands. When he turned 21, he asked Gregory if he could enroll in the Master Technician Certification program. "It's expensive," Gregory warned, "and intense. You'll be in school and working full-time for 2 years. I know, but I want to do it. I want to be really good at this. I want to be someone Dad can't dismiss as a failure." There was still pain there, still a son seeking his father's approval. Gregory understood that, even if he disagreed with Carlton deserving it. "I'll make you a deal," Gregory said. "The shop will cover half the tuition if you maintain AB average. The other half comes out of your paycheck in installments. You graduate, you get a raise that'll more than cover what you paid. Sound fair? More than fair." Brad extended his hand, and Gregory shook it, sealing the agreement. Melissa's semester at Oxford was transformative. She studied under professors who'd argued cases before the European Court of Human Rights, attended lectures by Supreme Court justices, wrote papers that challenged her thinking on fundamental questions of law and justice. When she returned to Harvard for her junior year, she was more focused than ever on civil rights law, more committed to using her education to help people who couldn't help themselves. The spring of her junior year, she called home with news that made Gregory pull over to the side of the road to fully absorb it. "I've been accepted to Harvard Law School," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Early admission. They're offering me a place in next year's class if I want it." "Melissa, that's incredible. We need to celebrate." "There's more. They're offering me a full scholarship. The whole 3 years. Everything covered. Dad, I'm going to be a lawyer." Gregory sat in his truck on the shoulder of the highway, tears streaming down his face, thinking about that dinner 4 years ago when Carlton had dismissed his daughter's dreams with casual cruelty. She'd proved him wrong in every possible way, not through anger or revenge, but through sheer excellence. "Your mom and I will be there for your graduation," he promised. Front row, center. The family dynamics had shifted irrevocably by the time Melissa graduated from Harvard with her bachelor's degree. Carlton attended the ceremony, sitting in the back row wearing a suit he'd owned for 10 years, driving a 7-year-old Toyota. Janie sat with Gregory and Christy, proud of her niece, tears streaming down her face as Melissa received her diploma with honors. Brad was there too, having taken the day off from the shop. He wore a sport coat Gregory had helped him pick out, his hands scrubbed clean, but still bearing the permanent marks of his trade. Small scars, calluses, the staining that comes from working with oils and fluids. He cheered loudly when Melissa's name was called, and later, at the celebration dinner, he pulled her aside. "I need to apologize," he said quietly, "for everything I said back in high school, for being an entitled asshole, for looking down on you and your parents. I was wrong about everything." Melissa studied him, this cousin who'd transformed from a spoiled teenager into a working man with purpose and humility. "I appreciate that, but you don't owe me an apology. You owe it to yourself to keep being the person you've become. That's the real redemption. Uncle Greg gave me that chance. I don't know if I ever properly thanked him. Thank him by being excellent. That's all he's ever wanted from any of us." The celebration dinner was at Christie's restaurant, the same upscale establishment where she'd worked her way from server to manager. She'd arranged for a private room, a special menu, champagne for toasts. Gregory sat at the head of the table, surrounded by family, friends, and the people who'd supported Melissa's journey: Oliver Stone, Mrs. Devine, Senator Rodriguez, and others. Carlton sat at the far end, quiet and withdrawn, watching as person after person stood to congratulate Melissa, to praise her achievements, to express their pride in knowing her. Each toast was a reminder of what he'd missed, what he'd dismissed, what he'd underestimated. When it was Gregory's turn to speak, he kept it simple. "To my daughter, who taught me that the best revenge is living well. To my wife, who showed us both that there's no shame in honest work. And to everyone here who proved that success comes from character, not bank accounts." To Melissa, the room chorused. Gregory met Carlton's eyes across the table. There was no triumph in his gaze, no mockery, just a simple acknowledgement of how far they'd all come, and how wrong Carlton had been about what mattered. Melissa started Harvard Law School that fall, diving into her studies with the same determination she'd shown throughout her undergraduate years. She called home every Sunday, sharing stories about her classes, her professors, her growing network of classmates who were destined to become judges, legislators, advocates. Meanwhile, Brad completed his master technician certification, graduating top of his class. Gregory promoted him to shop foreman at the commercial location, overseeing a team of 6 mechanics, managing schedules and quality control. At 23, Brad was earning a solid living, supporting himself, and building a life based on merit rather than inheritance. "I need to tell you something," Brad said one day, finding Gregory in his office at the main shop. "My dad came by last week. Asked me to help him with a business idea. Yeah. Insurance fraud scheme. Wanted me to help stage accidents with fleet vehicles, file false claims, split the payout." Brad's expression was disgusted. I told him no. Told him I worked too hard to build a reputation to throw it away on something like that. He called me ungrateful. Said I'd forgotten where I came from. Gregory leaned back in his chair, processing this information. "How'd you leave it?" I told him where I came from is exactly why I said no. I came from entitlement and shortcuts and thinking the rules didn't apply to me. "Uncle Greg, you showed me a different way. An honest way. I'm not going back." That took courage. "I'm proud of you. I wanted you to know. In case he tries to cause problems for the shop. Let me handle Carlton if he becomes an issue. You just keep doing what you're doing." Carlton did try to cause problems, filing a complaint with the state licensing board alleging that Gregory was running an unsafe operation. The inspector who came out found nothing but meticulous maintenance of equipment, proper documentation, and happy employees. The complaint was dismissed, and Carlton was warned about filing frivolous reports. It was a petty move born of desperation and resentment, and it only reinforced how far he'd fallen from the confident, condescending man who dismissed Melissa's dreams over dinner. The years rolled forward with a sense of momentum and purpose. Melissa excelled at Harvard Law, making law review, clerking for a federal judge during her 2L summer, building the kind of resume that would open any door she wanted. Gregory expanded again, opening a 3rd location specializing in electric and hybrid vehicles, positioning the business for the future of automotive technology. Brad was promoted to general manager of the commercial location, overseeing all operations, managing a staff of 12. He'd met a woman named Heidi Farrell, a nurse at the local hospital, and they were talking about getting married. His life had structure, purpose, relationships built on mutual respect rather than social status. And Carlton? Carlton had become a shadow of his former self, working a job he hated, living in circumstances he'd once pitied, watching his son thrive under Gregory's mentorship while he'd contributed nothing but criticism and doubt. The confrontation Gregory had been expecting for years finally came on a Tuesday afternoon in October. Carlton walked into Logan Automotive's main location without calling, without warning. His face set in hard lines of anger and resentment. "I need to talk to you," he said, finding Gregory in Bay 4, consulting with Robbie on a particularly complex restoration. "I'm in the middle of something. Can it wait?" "No, it can't wait." Carlton's voice was loud enough to draw attention from the other bays. "You've been undermining me for years, turning my son against me, throwing your daughter's success in my face, acting like you're better than me because you work with your hands." Gregory set down his tools carefully, wiping his hands on his shop rag. "Robbie, give us a minute." Robbie left, though Gregory could see him hovering just outside the bay, ready to intervene if needed. "I never turned Brad against you," Gregory said evenly. "I gave him a job when no one else would. I taught him a trade when you taught him entitlement. I showed him the value of hard work when you showed him how to look down on people who have less money. Whatever distance exists between you and your son, you created it. You've been holding that dinner against me for 7 years. I said one thing about Melissa, and you've been punishing me ever since." "One thing?" Gregory's voice sharpened. "You told my 15-year-old daughter she'd end up a waitress like her mother. You dismissed her dreams, her potential, her worth, all because she didn't come from money. You judged my wife for honest work that helped us build something real. And you know what? I didn't punish you, Carlton. I didn't need to. You punished yourself. That's bullshit. I helped my daughter succeed. You let your son fail. I built my business through relationships and reputation. You lost yours through fraud and arrogance. I supported my family. You resented yours. Every consequence you're living with right now, you earned. Don't blame me because you don't like the results." Carlton's face was red, his hands clenched into fists. "You think you're so much better than me. You and your perfect family, your successful daughter, your growing business. You're just a mechanic, Gregory. A grease monkey who got lucky. Maybe I'm just a mechanic. But I raised a daughter who's going to Harvard Law School. I built a business that employs 35 people and provides for their families. I helped your son become a man instead of a spoiled child. What have you built, Carlton? What legacy are you leaving?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Carlton opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came, because they both knew the answer was nothing. Carlton had inherited wealth and squandered it, inherited privilege and abused it, inherited respect and lost it. "Get out of my shop," Gregory said quietly. "And don't come back unless you're here to apologize to your son for being a shit father, or to thank me for being a better example than you ever were." Carlton left without another word, his departure watched by every employee in the shop. Gregory stood in the bay for a long moment, breathing deeply, letting the adrenaline fade. Then he picked up his tools and went back to work, because that's what he did. He showed up, he did the job, he took care of his people. That night, he called Melissa at Harvard. "Had a run-in with your uncle Carlton today." "Oh, what happened?" Gregory recounted the confrontation, leaving nothing out. When he finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. "Dad," Melissa finally said, "do you remember what you told me the night he said I'd be a waitress? You said Mom being a waitress wasn't something to be ashamed of, that it was heroic, that I carried that same strength. I remember. You were right. And you showed me that the best response to people like Uncle Carlton isn't anger or revenge. It's becoming so successful they can't ignore you, so excellent they can't dismiss you, so grounded in your values they can't shake you. You gave me that gift, Dad. Thank you." Gregory's eyes were wet. "You're going to be an amazing lawyer, sweetheart. And an even better person. I learned from the best." Melissa graduated from Harvard Law School 3 years later, top 10% of her class, with offers from prestigious firms across the country. She chose to join a civil rights organization instead, representing people who couldn't afford representation, fighting for justice rather than corporate profits. Her first case was defending a single mother wrongfully terminated from her job as a waitress. Melissa won, securing back pay and damages that allowed her client to start her own business. When she called to tell Gregory about the victory, he could hear the pride and purpose in her voice. Mom cried when I told her about the case, Melissa said. Said it felt like coming full circle. Your mom's always been your biggest fan. Right alongside me. Brad married Heidi that summer. A small ceremony at a local garden that Gregory helped pay for. Carlton attended but left early, unable to watch his son celebrate a life built on principles he'd never valued. Janie stayed for the whole reception, dancing with Gregory, laughing with Christy, genuinely happy for the first time in years. Thank you for giving my son a chance, she told Gregory during a slow dance. You saved him, you know, from becoming his father. Brad saved himself. He just needed the opportunity. Logan Automotive celebrated its 20th anniversary the following year with 3 locations, 42 employees, and a reputation as one of the premier automotive service providers in the state. Gregory stood in the main bay during the anniversary party, surrounded by his team, his family, and the community he'd served faithfully for 2 decades. Melissa was there, taking a break from her demanding caseload to celebrate her father's achievement. Brad was there too, now a certified master technician and partial owner of the commercial location, a partnership Gregory had offered him after 5 years of exemplary service. Christy stood beside Gregory, her hand in his, their journey from waitress and struggling mechanic to restaurant owner and successful businessman complete. Carlton wasn't there. Nobody had invited him. Speech, someone called out, and the crowd took up the chant. Gregory held up his hands, quieting them. 20 years ago, I had a dream in a single bay. My wife worked double shifts so I could chase that dream. My daughter studied by the light of my work lamp while I rebuilt engines late into the night. We didn't have money or connections or fancy degrees. We had each other, and we had the belief that hard work and integrity matter more than bank accounts or family names. He paused, looking at the faces around him, mechanics and detailers, managers and apprentices, friends and family. Someone once told my daughter she'd amount to nothing because of where she came from. Today, she's a Harvard-educated civil rights attorney fighting for people who need someone in their corner. Someone once implied that honest work was beneath them. Today, that person's son is one of my best managers because he learned that no honest work is beneath anyone. Gregory found Melissa in the crowd, then Brad, then Christy. I built this business on a simple principle. Treat people with respect, do quality work, and success will follow. Everything else, the money, the reputation, the growth, that's just a bonus. What matters is that we built something together, something real, something that helps people. That's the legacy I want to leave. The crowd erupted in applause. Melissa pushed through to hug her father, and Brad joined them. And then Christy, the 4 of them standing together in the center of the shop, surrounded by the evidence of what hard work and family could build. Later that night, after the party had ended and the shop was quiet, Gregory sat in his office looking at the framed acceptance letter from Harvard that Melissa had given him as a gift. Beside it was the photo he'd sent Carlton 7 years ago, the caption still as relevant as the day he'd written it. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He opened it to find a message from Carlton. You were right. About everything. I'm sorry. Gregory stared at the message for a long moment, then set his phone down without responding. Some apologies came too late, meant too little, or cost nothing from the person offering them. Carlton's sorry didn't change the past or the present. It was just words from a man who'd finally run out of excuses. But maybe, Gregory thought, it was a start. Maybe Carlton would find his own path to redemption, his own way to rebuild. That wasn't Gregory's problem to solve or burden to carry. He turned off the office light and headed home to Christy, to the life they'd built together through years of sacrifice and determination. Tomorrow he'd open the shop again, help customers, train his employees, and do the work he loved. And somewhere in Boston, his daughter was changing lives, proving every day that character and determination mattered more than privilege ever could. That was victory enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.